Okay, welcome to the Agency Express overview. And what we're going to be covering today is information related to how Ceres communicates with Agency Express, and also how to set up the agency's shoppers and items for online ordering, as well as troubleshooting some issues that arise as part of the Agency Express ordering process. And I did want to advise that the Agency Express portal, which is www.agencyexpress3.org, and sometimes it's also accessed through your own website for agency online ordering, is hosted by a company called Matrix. And issues that arise with the website itself, or people not being able to log on to the website, some of those things should be addressed through their support, although some of them can be addressed through our support. But if you ever need to contact Matrix support, their email address is aesupport@aidmatrix.org. So today we're going to cover the agency shopper and item setup first. And as you can probably tell, we're currently sitting on the agency list view, and we have in this test database here set up some Agency Express test agencies so that we can play around with the different agency group codes and activity statuses to see how they operate when communicating with Agency Express. But you'll see that we have one here that's set up as a active agency, and we're going to go ahead and double click on this agency here, or you can right click and edit to access the agency card. And one of the key things that must be in place in order for an agency, there are several things that have to be in place, but one of the key things for an agency to order online is that they, of course, must have their agency card completely filled out, but they must have a UNC activity status that has a matching activity status on Agency Express. And for the people who handle the configuration management screen on Agency Express, they would be familiar with setting up the activity statuses on that page. If you're not one of those people, or you're not sure if you ever need to know that, this is the corresponding field in Ceres. And when you log on to Agency Express as an administrator and go to the configuration management page, there is a setup there for all of the different UNC activity statuses that you have in Ceres. In this database, we currently have these activity statuses. So on Agency Express, in the configuration management page for the activity statuses, these same statuses are also set up. However, on the configuration management page on Agency Express, they put in different messages so that if a shopper is with an agency that has an active activity status, one, does that activity status allow shopping? So if it's an activity status that doesn't allow shopping, then they log in and they might get a message telling them why they can't shop, and then they wouldn't be able to place an order at that time until they resolve the issue. But all of the same activity statuses that are in Ceres must also be on Agency Express. And in this case, the UNC activity status of active is tied to a status on the website that allows shopping. So if I logged into the website as a shopper for this agency, I would be able to place an order based on the items that are available for me to order. So this is one of the key fields on the agency card that must have a value. And pretty much you can't do any ordering in Ceres, even manual orders, without this activity status being populated. So just know that it also has a corresponding entry on the Agency Express side. Additionally, in order to have an agency eligible for web ordering, you have to assign them an agency group code. But in order to assign an agency group code, the agency must have a default ship-to address. And the default ship-to address is assigned on the shipping tab. And it says default ship-to code. And first you have to set up the default ship-to address, and in this case the code is default. And then once that is set up, you assign it in the default ship-to code field, and then you would then be able to allow an agency to be able to shop online. But without that code, you would get an error message. So to add an agency ship-to code, if you don't already have one, you would simply go to Related Information, Agency, and then ship to addresses. And you can see the one that we have here for default. If you needed to create a new one because one didn't exist, you can click on New. And then you would basically just set up whatever code you wanted to use. If, for example, an agency had multiple ship-to addresses, you could set up the code to reference, one ship-to address versus another, whatever makes the most sense for identifying it. And then you would put that ship-to address there. And then once that value is populated, you can assign the default ship-to code. So whichever one is the most common, you would assign here in the default ship-to code field on the Shipping Fast tab. Once that is defined, then you are able to actually assign an agency group code and permit an agency for web ordering. The agency group code is something that is defined, and it's a way of grouping qualifiers and perhaps item limitations to specific types of agencies. So you might have mobile pantries, you might have schools or other types of agencies that can be clustered together that share similar qualifiers as to what types of items they can see on the web. Some items, those items that don't have any qualifiers attached to them, are eligible for anyone to see on the web as long as there's quantity on hand and the item is permitted for web ordering. But other items would get a qualifier that would say, okay, this item is specifically set aside for agencies that also have this qualifier. And instead of having to put the qualifiers on the single agencies, we've created this format where you have an agency group code, and you can set the qualifiers on the group code, and then you can take and assign that one group code to all the agencies that have the same criteria for ordering. So when you click on the down arrow here, you will see all the different agency group codes that are available. And this is just a test database, so these are going to be different than what you see. And then once you've determined which agency group code should be assigned to that particular agency, then you will go ahead and choose that on the agency card. But before you have an agency group code, if you try to click on the Permit Web Order screen, you won't be able to. You'll get an error message that you must first have an agency group code in order to do that. So just know that having an activity status as well as having a default ship-to code and then assigning the agency group code on the Information Fast tab will allow you then to check the Permit Web Orders tab, or field, I'm sorry. So once you've permitted the agency for web ordering, that is actually going to generate a file that gets sent to Agency Express. And the file sends information about the agency, what location they're in, what default shipment method they have. You can see here that this agency's default shipment method is pickup. Because between the location and the shipment method, that determines what calendar they see on the web as far as what days they can and times they can choose for online ordering for the order that they submit. So it sends up all that information in a file, as well as information about whether or not the agency is active or inactive or other particular options. So I'm going to, sorry, I got a little note there, pop up. So in this particular case, this agency group code is marked as Colorado Springs agencies. So there was a grouping of agencies that fell into this particular group with the same qualifiers, and that determines what we will see when we go into the shopping list on Agency Express. Once the agency is ready to go and has been permitted for web ordering, then the next thing you want to do is set up the shoppers for that agency. If you have an agency that's already been online and you just need to add a new shopper, you would do it in the same place. So you would go to Related Information, Agency, and then Shoppers. And you'll see we have an existing shopper here, and this is their name and email address. The web login is crucial. You must have a web login, otherwise they can't log into the website and place an order. And if you try to check the box for Permit Web Orders before you've inserted an email address and a web login, you will get error messages. So you have to have the name filled in. And on the name field, you want to make sure that you have a full name. In this case, it looks kind of funny, but what Ceres will consider this to be is COS will be the first name and Shopper1 will be the last name. So if you just simply put in a single name like this, what that does, even though you can't see it here, is it creates an entry where the first name is blank and the last name is whatever you insert here in the name field. And this causes a problem on Agency Express. So you want to make sure that before you ever hit Permit Web Orders when you're setting up a new shopper, that you have a full name in this field. Otherwise, it's going to cause problems on Agency Express, and I believe it can even stop the flow of files processing and be a bigger issue than just for your own food bank. So make sure that you put in a full name, and I'm just going to say Connie Test, before you actually get over here and click on Permit Web Orders. And as I mentioned before, if you don't enter an email address or web login and you select Permit Web Orders, you will get an error message. And it says that the web login must have a value, and you'll say, well, I don't know what this number is here, but that's the number that's assigned to the shopper behind the scenes. And we're not currently displaying it on this screen, so you don't see the shopper number, but it's telling me that the web login must have a value. So this field here must have a value. And I can clear that error by hitting F5, and then it just says there are errors, do you want to discard? And then I can go back and make sure that I populate the web login. And you might be using first name, last initial, or first initial, last name, or whatever your web logins are. You want to keep them consistent. It just makes it easier for helping the shoppers if they call in and they can't remember their web login. If you keep them consistent, or you can also go to the agency and look at the shoppers and see what their web login is. You can give them that information in case they've lost it. You don't have to remember their password. The nice thing about Agency Express now is that if they forget their password, they have a little option they can check that says forgot password, and an email will be sent from Agency Express to them to let them know that the password has been changed, and they can go in and access that way and then change it to whatever password they want. And I believe it gives me an error message if I don't have an email address. I'm going to double check. Yep, it does. Okay, so the first error was about the web login. And also, if you don't have an email address, it will give you this error message. Now, why does it care about an email address on the shopper? Well, when the agency or when the shopper for the agency places the order, either at the time they place the order once it comes into Ceres and is received and acknowledged, they would get an email that lets them know that their order's been received. Or depending on the food bank settings, you may have it set so that they get the email when the order's been moved into food bank only mode, or perhaps even when the order is being ready to be picked. So just depending on the settings that you have at your food bank in the agencies and receivable setup, it will determine when they get that email. But in order for them to get the email, they must have a valid email address. So the key thing here that I find happens a lot is that people will copy the email address from a spreadsheet that they have. And the problem with copying from a spreadsheet, as you may know, is that it always inserts two little boxes at the end for blanks. And you can't see those when you insert or paste into the field in Ceres. You don't see those. They're just blanks. But you want to make sure that if you copy from another, from a spreadsheet or from some other place, and you paste in here, that you hit the end button on your keyboard to make sure. So let's, for example, go up here. And if, oh, I have to get rid of my error message first. So we'll go up here, and if I click at the end and my cursor is right after the last character, then I know that this email address is okay, and also that I don't have any funky characters in my email address, or say an email address that just looks like this. You know, that's not going to be a valid email address. So you have to make sure that you are very conscientious about the email address that gets put in here. If you're concerned at all, what you might want to do before you permit them for web ordering is try to send them an email yourself from your Outlook or whatever email you're using, and just make sure that that email goes through. And if it does, then you can feel confident that you can assign that to the shopper and then permit them for web ordering. So I'm going to delete this one because we really don't need it. So once you have a first and last name and an email address and a web login defined, then you can select the Permit Web Orders. And this will, again, just like with the agency, send some information to Agency Express about this shopper. It will send information about whether the shopper is active, and by active we mean that they're permitted for web ordering. And it will also send information about the agency, whether that agency's status is active or some other status. So this is the shopper setup window, and again, we access that from the agency card by going to Related Information, Agency, and then Shoppers. Does anyone have any questions about the agency card setup fields that are necessary for Agency Express? And you can just put a little note in the chat if you want, if you have a question. If not, we'll go on to items. All right then, you can always ask later if you think of something. So I'll go ahead and close the agency card, and now we're going to go to inventory, and we're going to look at the items. And it doesn't matter how you get to the items. There's various different ways to get there. Basically, it's under planning and then items. And I've made it so that I can see items with quantity on hand here, and I also have the column for permit web orders. If I wanted to see only items that were marked as permit web orders, so I can see what items are currently available for shopping, I can come up here to the filter and choose permit web orders as my filter, and then enter a value of yes, except for I have to spell it right. And then once I hit that, it will show me all the items that are in the database that are currently permitted for online ordering. So I can take this list and I can export it to Excel if I want. You can do that by going to Actions and then Send to Excel, and you can see your list of items there. Or you can just review it here on screen. If you want to add items, so let's say you have new items that need to be permitted for web ordering. So I'm going to remove that filter so we see all items again. But I'm going to put in a filter for items with quantity on hand because I don't want to see items that don't have any quantity because they're not going to do me any good for allowing for web ordering. So we now see all the items that have quantity on hand, and we can see those that are marked for web ordering and those that are not. So if we wanted to now add these cheese crackers to the web for online ordering, we can't click the box right here. We actually have to go in and edit the item card. And again, you can either do that by double clicking or you can right click and choose edit. And before you can permit an item for web ordering, it has to be fully set up, meaning that all of the codes must be defined. And I believe those are on the item tracking tab here. So yes, all of your storage requirement, product type, etc. codes, they must all be populated. It must have a valid gross weight, valid unit of measure, and all of those other things should all be set up. So basically it should be an item that's ready to be ordered within Ceres first before you ever permit it for web ordering for the online system. Once you are ready to permit it for web ordering, however, then you can go ahead and check the box that says Permit Web Orders. And then I always go down and click the OK button to make sure that that Permit Web Orders flag has been truly updated in the system. Also, moving to another field on the item card usually helps, but just to be safe, I choose the OK button. And then that now marked my cheese crackers as Permit Web Orders. So what that's going to do now is going to create a file in the web processing queue to send the item information up to the web. So if we go back over to Agencies and Receivables and go to Agency Express, and if you have the View Web Sync option set in User Setup, then you will be able to access the Agency Express web processing queue. And you can see that this generated a couple lines of entry in our queue, one for the item master. This file is identified as an ITM file when you're looking at the folder structure for the sync. And it sends all of the item master information. So all that information on the item card, that's important information for the shopper to know, such as the pack size, the description, the item number, the gross weight, the fees, etc. associated with the item, that all goes up in the item master. Additionally, the item availability file sends up what item quantities are available based on each agency group. So some agency groups, if the item is qualified, will not ever see that item on the web. So if they don't have the same qualifier as the qualifier on the item, or if there's more than one qualifier on the item, they must have all the qualifiers that are on the item in the agency group in order to see it. And this file here will generate all those different quantities in the file that goes to Agency Express to update what shows in the shopping list there. And then this item fees also sends additional fee information about the item. Now on this particular test database we have the FTP, and so let me just kind of run quickly over some technical things here, which may or may not be stuff that you have to worry about, but if it is, or if you ever have to worry about this stuff down the road, it's good to know. This right here, the web processing queue, files that come in from the Agency Express website and files that go out to the Agency Express website are handled through a process called FTP, or File Transfer Protocol. And that is a scheduled task that is set up on the sync server machine to handle that processing. And in this particular scenario, it happens about every 3 minutes. However, before those files are even created, they have to be processed by something called the Navision Application Server. You can see right here at the very top it says Navision Application Server waiting for next cycle. And the last time it ran was at 11:26. Now, I can't remember if this one's set to every 5 minutes, but even if it is every 3 minutes, this does not necessarily update. So you might have to refresh the screen, and as soon as I hit refresh the screen, you'll notice that the files here went away, and they should actually be down here in the process entries now. So we created the item master, the item availability, and the item fees. So this screen that you see here is handled, the inbound stuff and the outbound stuff is handled by a process called Navision Application Server. And depending on if you're on the Feeding America site, they have it set up certain way to whether it handles processes every 3 minutes or every 5 minutes or whatever the case may be. And that will either create the new files that go into the out folders for the FTP to pick up, or it will read in any files that are sitting in the in folders. And basically, if I go down here and I actually, let's just go to the desktop here because I have a folder on the desktop. So I have a shortcut to the SyncV 2009 folders. And so when those files that we just saw, or that we just processed, they go into this out folder, and they go into the catalog folder to be sent to Agency Express. And we're only seeing the ITF file, which is the item fee file. So that tells me that the item availability file and the item master file have already processed. And once they process, they actually go into the backup folder. And so we can see that we just sent an item availability and an item master. Now you might wonder what these look like. So I'm going to go ahead and open them up. And the item master basically sends the item number, the description, what kind of web catalog name they have, the product type, UNC product type code, which is 25, the handling requirement, which is dry, the packaging type, which is case, what the product category is, the FEC product category for this item, what the sales unit of measure is, which basically is the same as your base unit of measure, the unit price, any VAT fees, the pack size, the gross weight, and you'll notice that this one has a 0 gross weight. Well, that's bad news because an item can't have a 0 gross weight. So when I was explaining before how you want to make sure that the item has all the values populated, in this case, this item would be a bad item at this point in time because it has a 0 gross weight. we would want to make sure that it has a real gross weight on it, whether it be a pound item, because this is an each item, or have whatever the gross weight is for each of this particular snack food, cheese crackers. So what we would want to do is go back to the item, make our correction, and then unpermit the item for web ordering, close out of the item so that it can be sure to send that update to the web, and then go back into the item and reselect permit web ordering. So we're going to do that. Okay, so I either lost somebody or or somebody joined. Okay, I guess Dora left. So we're going to go back in and go to the main menu here, and we'll go to our item card. And we'll go ahead and open up this item. And I'm going to first, actually I probably said that wrong before. What I first want to do is uncheck permit web orders for this item. So I want the system to create a new file to send 0 quantity up to the web for this item, because right now the gross weight value is incorrect. So I uncheck that and I click OK. That's going to create another entry in the web sync to send up that information. Then I'm going to go back into the item, and I'm going to locate the field for the gross weight. And it does have a value for gross weight, but this particular item, apparently because it's less than 1, sent a gross weight of 0. So I don't know how often that occurs where you have a gross weight less than 1, but it does look like in the item file that it is truncated to 0. So when the shopper logs into the site and they see the item in the shopping list, they would see that the gross weight is 0, so they wouldn't really know the true gross weight in cases like this. So we're going to actually make this item have a gross weight of more than 1, or just 1 actually, so we can see that value in the field. And it won't let me change it, but this is a test database. Normally, like I said before, you would have all this information updated before you permit the item for web ordering. But I am going to do that because this item's never been on the web before, and I will change it back in the test database when I'm done. But we want to see that value of 1 go up in that item master file. And then once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and click OK to save my change. And then I'm going to go back in and re-permit the item for web ordering. And again, I'm going to click OK. Now, a lot of times you'll have an item that is available for online ordering, and for some reason you no longer want to allow it for online ordering. Some of the things that people tend to do is they'll block the item rather than uncheck the permit web orders value, and that the blocking of an item or the blocking of an agency does not send any information to Agency Express. That field is not a field that it cares about, so you want to make sure if you truly want to block an item for online ordering that you go into the item card, you uncheck permit web orders, and then you click OK and make sure that that information gets sent. And you can always check to make sure that it gets sent by going to the web sync and checking to see if an item availability update was created. And you'll see that we just had a new item availability created at 11:37. Whatever time, yeah, this is Mountain Time here. 10:37 my time, and whatever time you're on, it might be slightly different. But this will send that update to the web. So if you're trying to troubleshoot whether or not an update's been sent, you can come look here at the web processing queue. If it's in the unprocessed entries, then that means it hasn't yet been sent. And I just hit F5, which refreshed. And then if it has been sent, it should be down here in the web processing queue processed entries. And if you want to change the sort of how this queue is viewed, you click on the action lightning bolt and then go to sort. And then I typically have it sorted in process date, process time, and type, and then by descending. And that way the newest entries are at the top. But you can set it, whatever way you prefer. But I just find that it's easier to find stuff that way if the newest stuff is on the top. So once all of these process, then it will send the update to the web with the gross weight of 1 for that item, and it will show the quantity of, I think it was 1,115 that was available. And of course, to check and make sure that the file is processed, you can go to the Sync V2009 folder if you have access. If you're on the Feeding America's site, if they're hosting your sync server, they can give you the path for the sync server if that's part of your job to troubleshoot issues like this. Then they will give you access to that, and you can go in here and look at the folders and make sure that everything processed. And as I mentioned before, in addition to the Navision application server running, the FTP process is what grabs the files from Agency Express and brings them into the in folders, and also what takes all the stuff in the out folders and sends to the Agency Express server. And so you will have a scheduled task set up called FTP or AEFTP or something similar, and it's set to, I got that a little bit scrunched there. It's set to run on a certain time frame, in this case every 5 minutes, and it says that the last time, well actually it says it's currently running, so you can come in here and check to see, like let's say that you get a message that you're supposed to be getting orders, right? You get the email that says that orders have been submitted, yet you're not seeing those orders come into Ceres. And if you need to troubleshoot that, one of the things that you want to look at is to make sure that your FTP script is running and that it hasn't stopped for some reason. In this case, our last run result just says that it's currently running. And when it's done, it'll say the operation completed successfully, like these other lines. And so once it completes successfully, then we know that files have transmitted to and from Ceres and Agency Express. But if this is not running, let's say maybe perhaps there was a change in the password that's used for the scheduled task when it was created. So in this case, this scheduled task was created by Agency EXP. And if the password was changed for the Agency EXP login, then that could cause the FTP process not to run anymore, not to be triggered. So this is where you would come in and find out why those orders are not coming into Ceres. If that's the case, then you'll know that you need to either restart this, and if it doesn't allow you to restart it, it could be because of a password issue, and you might have to find out what changed and get that taken care of. But the FTP has to be running on a regular basis in order for those files to flow to and from Ceres and Agency Express. And then also, if you see in the web processing queue that this Navision application server last iteration has not updated for quite a while, then that means that something has happened to the service that runs the Navision application process. And to get to the service, you may have a link on your desktop. We've put the services link here. Or you may have to go to the Start button and choose Services from the Administrative Tools panel. But you would go to Services, and you would look for the Application Server for Dynamics Nav, Classic AE3 SQL, and it says that it started, so we know that it's currently running, and we could stop the service, restart the service. But if you come in here and see that it's not running, in other words, there's nothing here and started, then you know that the problem is not with the connection between Ceres and Agency Express, but with your internal connection that finds those files in the in folder and brings them into Ceres to process. So those are the two places where you would want to troubleshoot first to see why orders might not be coming into Ceres or why item availability updates aren't being sent. So if you know that you've either permitted an item for web ordering, or if you've taken the item off online web ordering and you check online and you don't see any changes related to that after, say, 10 minutes or so, then you want to make sure that both the FTP process and the Navision application server process are running. and if they aren't, know how to troubleshoot those. So again, this is in the services, and if you don't have this little handy snap-in that we have, you can go and access it by going to Start and then going to Computer. Actually, I'm sorry, going to Control Panel. And again, this is dependent on what type of machine you're running this on as to how this looks, but typically it's going to be under your administrative tools and then under services. And then again, you want to look for the one that says Application Server for Navision Classic. All right, let's go back and let's see here. We wanted to check and make sure that our files have all synchronized now. So I'm going to hit F5 to update. Okay, and it looks like everything has now processed. So we should be able to go into our Sync v2009 folders and either find the updates in the out folder, which means it hasn't been picked up by the FTP yet, or find them in the backup folders. So if we go back over here and we look in the out folder, which is where you'll find all the files that have been have left unprocessed entries but haven't yet gone to Agency Express via the FTP. And where you would find item-related files is going to be in the catalog folder. Where you would find agency and shopper-related files would be in the org folder. Although the ITI file, which also sends agency information, goes into this catalog folder. And then anything having to do with your schedule. So if you're sending updates regarding schedules, if you've run the create scheduling routines and synchronized your schedules to the web, this is the folder where that information goes. And then the trans folder is where all of your outbound order-related information goes. So if you have accepted an order, or if you've invoiced an order, or changed the order modifications from shopper only to food bank only, all that information goes in the out trans folder. I'm assuming that all of our stuff is processed by now, and we can tell by double-clicking on the folder. And if it's empty, then it means that everything has processed. It's been picked up by that FTP script and has been sent to Agency Express. So it looks like everything is clear in our out folders. So all of those files should have moved to the backup folders. And again, our catalog folder is where we'll find the item fee file, which is designated by ITF. And if we open that item fee file up, take it a moment here. Or maybe more than a moment. Let's try doing that with opening without using the double click. I'm going to right click and choose Open with Notepad. Some of these files are a little picky. You can't open them with XML. You have to open them with Notepad. And it could be because of the remote desktop that I'm on. I can't open that in the normal format. But this is an item fee file based on the information in the database. This is an item fee code here on the left. This is the item number, and this is the fee associated with each code. So if you had like delivery fees and whatnot set up, that information would go in that file. The item master file, designated by ITM, is what, as I mentioned before, sends all the item information. This one I believe we can double click on and open. Nope, at least not on this screen. It's not very helpful. We'll right click on it and do it that way. On yours, you might be able to open it with XML if you have XML Reader. So again, it sends the information, and here where previously we had a 0 in the gross weight field because the gross weight on the item card was less than 1, we now have a gross weight of 1. And then all this information will be available for the shopper to see either on the shopping list in the main list, or when they double click on the item detail or click on the item detail and go look at that. And we'll look at that in just a second. And then the item availability file is identified by the ITQ prefix. And if we open that one, It shows us the item number. In this case, there was only one item in this file, the agency group of 10, and the agency group quantity available, which is 712. So based on the location that agency group 10 is in, which happens to be the Colorado Springs location, that's the available quantity. So even though I think there were 1,115 on hand of that item, not all of that product was in that agency group, or I'm sorry, in that location. So this agency group only sees what's in the location that's identified for them. All right, and then we're going to go back and we're going to look at the org file, or the org files, and let's resort this so we have these at the top. So our ORAC file, which is sending information about the agency, all kinds of information, the name of the agency number, additional information about their payment terms, and all kinds of stuff. So sends their city, their location, information, all that. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, then there we go. Basically, it just gives you information about their contacts, what their login is, all that kind of information is sent in the ORAC file. And then additionally, with the ORAC file, information about the program, or the agency, sorry, old version, is also sent in the ITI file in the catalog folder. So down here, yesterday I sent information about this particular agency. And if we open up the ITI file, oh shoot, and again I opened it up in the version that this one doesn't accept. So it sends information. Here's the ID for logging in for this agency. It's an organization. The activity status of 1 means that it's an active agency. This is the agency group code associated with the agency. Their default calendar, which is P, stands for pickup. Otherwise, you might see D for deliver. Their hold code is active, meaning that's the UNC activity status. So even though it says hold code, this is the same as what means UNC activity status in Ceres. Their location, and the location, again, along with their agency group, identifies what items they can see on the web, what quantities get set up there. In the Prop 1 value, this sends the credit limit that's assigned to an agency. So if you're using credit limits and you're not sure why you don't see information, actually, this doesn't send the credit limit. I take that back. This field is actually the available credit for an agency. So for example, if the agency had a credit limit of $1,000, but they currently had orders in the system for $250, then the value that would be sent in this file is $750. And so when they log into Agency Express, what they see in the credit limit or available credit field is $750. So if you're ever curious as to why the agency sees an available credit that seems odd, you can go to the agency and resend the agency information. There's an action button called Resend Agency. And once you resend the agency information, it will create a new ITI file. And you can open up that ITI file once it's processed and check to see what the value is in this Prop 1 field. And it should match the information that is on the agency card. And let's go back over here to the agency card and we'll just take a look at this a little bit closer. So if we go to the agency card, and we actually have over here in our little fact boxes their credit limit, and then they don't have any balance, they don't have any outstanding orders, they don't have any shipped not invoiced. But what it will do if they have a balance or outstanding orders or shipped not invoiced is take this value minus the values in these fields, and that is what it will send as the available credit to the web. So if they had $250 balance and they had an outstanding orders of $150, then that would be a total of $400 that was taken away from their credit limit. So the available credit that would go up in that Prop 1 field would be $600. And when you logged into Agency Express as the shopper, then what you would see in the available credit is $600. And if the agency tries to place an order that will take them over their $600 credit limit and you have it set to not allow shopping over credit, then they would get a message that tells them that they can't put the item on the order. They'd have to either go back and take a different item quantity off or adjust other quantities so that they would have enough so they didn't overstate or overreach their credit limit. So in this particular case, they don't have any open orders or balances, so their total available credit is $1,000, which is what we saw in the file. And I get calls on that every now and then for people who aren't sure why the agencies are seeing the value that they see in their available credit on Agency Express. So as I mentioned earlier, Agency Express is run by a matrix. However, because I've done many Agency Express implementations, I'm quite familiar with their website. You may log into Agency Express via a portal on your own website, or your shoppers may also log in via portal on your website, but the direct Agency Express access is from a website, www.agencyexpress3.org. Now, I'm logging in to test, so I have a completely different address up here. Don't be alarmed by that. But if I wanted to log in now as a shopper for the agency that we looked at earlier, I would enter my shopper name and password and then the program code or agency code, which is your food bank ID followed by a lowercase p and then the actual agency number. And if you need to log in and check on something for a shopper and you don't happen to know their login, you can use what we call a shadow shopper login, which is simply putting in the username of admin, A-D-M-I-N, and then the password, the typical change 1-2 password, unless you've changed your admin login password, and then the group code, agency group code of the agency that you want to log in as. That will allow you to see what they see in their shopping list and what they see in their order management screen, but you will be logged in as what we call a shadow shopper. You're not actually logged in as them. So you don't want to submit an order under the shadow shopper login because it doesn't have a shopper tied to it in Ceres, but you can go in and look at their shopping list, look at their scheduling, look at their items and their order management screen, and you can view all those things without having to know their login information. You may know their web login because that's in Ceres, but you might not know their password if they've changed it. So it's just an alternate way to get in if you need to be able to check on some of those things for the shopper. So once you log in, and you'll notice there, quickly it went away, but it said if you need to clear your login information, it had an option there, or if you needed to find out what your password was or get it reset, it gave you that option as well. Now, this activity status alert, this will change depending on the activity status assigned to the agency and what information you have as the, what's the word, as the description for that activity status on Agency Express. So the login for those agencies that have active activity statuses for this particular sandbox will get this message. If they were an inactive agency order, can you go over the login info again for seeing the agency group codes? Do you mean the code logging into the website? Okay, so we'll go back out here again, and let me get back to the site here. Sorry, mouse is being a little crazy there. So this is where the shopper would normally log in. They would enter their username in the username field. So this is their web login. So whatever web login they have defined in Ceres is going to be the web login that they use here in the username field. And then the password always starts out as change12. And it's change12, CHANGE 12. And then they can always change it. And then they can use the changed password from there on out. Yeah, Ashley, or I'm sorry, it's not Ashley because Ashley's gone. Dee Dee, you have a question?
Yes, on my login information for my computer, when I try to go in to look at the agency, on here it says you can click here to clear the username. Mine will not clear for anything. I've tried to unlog it as a favorite, but every time I go in there, it's stuck as my original login person that I tried the first time I started
Okay.
using it. Right.
In that case, that would be a question for Aid Matrix, since they are
Okay.
the site, the host of this site. So that's where you would want to use the email for AE support at aidmatrix.org, and just tell
Okay.
them that you've tried to clear the username and program code and it won't go away. Now, they might suggest that you use a different portal to get in. Like if you were using Internet Explorer, they might say try Mozilla Firefox or
Okay.
Chrome or something like that, but it should still be able to clear. Like if I select click here, then it doesn't remember my information. So it
Yeah,
could
mine
be
is it's been permanently remembered. Like it just doesn't. So I have to clear it every time to put in a new agent.
right. So you might try logging in under a different portal
Okay.
for the Internet Explorer, and if that doesn't work, then email Aid Matrix support and see if they can help you with that.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, so let's go ahead and go in. Now, of course, I got to re-enter my information here since I cleared it. And again, it's the food bank ID followed by a lowercase p and then the agency's number. And if you want it to be remembered, then you would click this box. If you don't want it to be remembered the next time, make sure this is unchecked. So I don't know, Dee Dee, if that was possibly a case, but if you don't have this remember me next time checked, then it should clear out what you've input. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. And this is going to take me to the welcome message. And again, the welcome message is going to be different depending on the activity status associated with the agency that's logging in. So if they're an inactive agency, maybe they've been suspended because they haven't paid their balance, then they would get a message associated with that activity status when they log in. If that activity status does not allow shopping, they can still log in and see their old orders, but they would not be able to submit a new order. This particular agency is active, so we can go here and we can look at the shopping list, and we should be able to submit an order. So we can go in and we can see the items. And what I was talking about before as what the item master sends is it sends the available quantity based on the agency group associated with this agency, the location that they're in, and what available quantity there is for that location, and whether or not the agency is qualified for the item, which is part of their agency group. So if they're not qualified for the item, then the item is not going to show up in this list at all. And if they are qualified, then it's going to show whatever quantity is on hand and available, meaning not on other orders and not like, you know, in a different location for the location that is associated with their agency card. It shows the description, the unit price, VAP fee if any, pack size, feature type, which is a field that's available on an item card in Ceres. A lot of people aren't using it, but the generic default ones are free, discontinued item, and new item, which you can identify on an item if you want to promote it as a certain type. And then the gross weight shows over here. Now you can see our cheese crackers that we added. There's the available quantity that we saw in that item availability file. And the gross weight of 1, because we changed it to 1 from the 0.04666. And if we want more information about the item, we can click on this link right here. And it will take us to this additional screen here. So it shows us the gross weight item. Handling requirement of dry shows here. So this came from that item master file. The pack size, the price per unit of measure, the category, the food source. All of this information came from that item master file that we were looking at before. Now, there's some stuff that isn't filled in, such as this extra info. That would be like if you have extended text associated with an item card. Let's say it's a prepackaged meal or something and you want to send cooking instructions. You can put that in the extended text on the item. And then if you're synchronizing extended text to the web, which is a setting in agencies and receivable setup, then they would be able to see extended text information here, such as that cooking information. We'll go ahead and close that. You'll notice that some of the fields that we were talking about, such as feature type, can be used as filters. So if I was using feature type and I wanted to, see all the new items, then I would select new item here. Now, I don't think there are any like that, so when I click search, we'll probably get nothing in our shopping list, and that's true. So we'll get no records found. So if I want to hit see everything again, I just click on show all. So you can tell your shoppers just click on show all. They'll see all the items again. You can filter by storage requirement. So if they don't have a refrigerator or freezer, then hope you may have it set it up so they can only see dry items depending on qualifiers. But if you don't and they only want to see dry, then they can click in the handling requirement field and then choose search, and then it will narrow the list and show them only the dry items or whatever they choose. Additionally, oops, sorry, it's got scroll is stuck there. I can also look by item descriptors if you're using item descriptors. Item descriptors are often things like low-fat, sugar-free, kosher, just things like that. You can set up item descriptors. Oh, this mouse is going a little crazy here. I give up. It just keeps going down. Okay. So if you're using descriptors, then when you click on this little question mark here, it will show the item descriptors that you have in use. There aren't any set up in this test database, so we don't see any here. But you could, if you were a shopper, filter by item descriptors if they are in use. You can also look at food by food source. Again, they're only going to see items that they're qualified for. So if they pick a food source that they're not qualified for, then they're not going to see those items. So in this case, they are qualified for food source of feeding program, and these are the only two items that are in that food source. So they can use that as a filter. Can also use category as a filter. So these are the different categories that are available. If you internally call them something else, you can change the settings on the Agency Express configuration management page for your categories, and they'll see whatever you've changed it to. So if you, instead of dairy, you had milk and eggs, then they would see milk and eggs. So to see all the shopping list items, they would click on Show All. And if they want to search for a specific item number, they can, or description up here. Now you'll notice up here in the shopping cart, it says that there's a total due of $89.90. And we didn't see any balance in Ceres, and that's because there is an unsubmitted order for this particular agency, and the unsubmitted order total is $89.90. And you'll notice that the available credit limit is $1,000 less $89.90. So they can add to the order or create new orders up to their available credit limit, but if we allowed shopping over the credit limit, then they could just keep ordering. But if you didn't allow shopping over the credit limit, then once they got to this limit, they would get an error message and they would not be able to add items until they made changes, either reduced quantities or picked other items that did not cost quite as much. So once they can also see the gross weight of their total order. So they'll know how much, if they're doing a pickup in this case, how much they need to be able to handle in the vehicle that they bring for the pickup. They can also see the total number of line items, and it's 3. You say, well, I see all kinds of items here. Well, that's because I'm not looking at the cart or the checkout screen. So if we want to go look at the checkout screen, we can click on the checkout icon. If we want to add more items, then we can click on an item here and put in our quantity and then add it to the cart. One thing you want to make sure your shoppers know, that if they're adding items to the cart and they're just putting quantities down here, they want to make sure that they add the items to the cart before leaving the page that they're on, and it says that right here. So this agency is ready to check out, and they go to the checkout screen, and it's before it showed us that there were 3 line items in the cart. If you're using cubic size on your items, then it will show them their total cubic feet, total due, gross weight, and if you're using delivery fees, then the estimated delivery fee. If we wanted to change the quantity at this time, we could, but if we're ready to go, then we would simply, as a shopper, come up here and select our schedule type. This agency is a pickup agency, and the pickup is selected. So then we'll go here, and you will only see, now what they see in the appointment times has to do with several different things. One is whether or not they can pre-reserve their appointments or whether or not they're standing appointments only, and also what date range is currently available for showing online. So a lot of times people will say, well, my agency can't see their appointment. Well, if the configuration management order window date has not been updated or is not including the date that they're trying to see their appointment for, then it won't show up on here. But as long as their appointment falls within the range that's available for online ordering, then they would see this. So we'll pick our appointment date, and then when we come over here to time, it will show us the time that has already been reserved for them, whether it be a standing appointment or a scheduled appointment or pre-reserved appointment. They want to make sure that they don't put their comments in before doing this part, because if they put in their comments and then go up here and select the date and time, it will clear their comments. These are just things, even though I don't work for the company that does the website, I've just had a lot of experience with it, so I know that if you put in a comment, it will disappear if you go back up and try to change these things. So it tells you, please limit comment to 150 characters and no special characters. If you try to put in a special character, it deletes it. So it doesn't even allow it anymore. It used to allow it and it would cause problems, but they don't even allow it anymore. So they can say, please call Peter at, and then put in a phone number, whatever they want. That will go into the delivery information field on the web delivery web tab. So you could see that on the actual order if you're printing out that information on the order, or you can just see it online in the order. And then when you're ready to, or when they're ready to submit the cart, they would come in here and click on Submit Cart, or continue shopping, or if they want to start over, clear cart. If they want to print, they can print now, or they can print after they've submitted the cart, either way. Or they can do it both. It always asks them, do they want to submit the order? And they confirm that. And then once it's done, it will create, it will pop up with a message telling them that their order was submitted successfully. Now, if you're set up in Ceres to send them an automated email when that order is received in Ceres and acknowledged, then they will get an email hopefully within about 10 minutes of the time that they submitted the order. If you have it set to send the email later, then obviously they're not going to get it right away, and they would have to come into the order management screen and see what status their order is. A quick review of the statuses. The order, when it's first submitted, will show a status of new order. Once that order has left Agency Express, it will then say sent to food bank. So if the shopper never sees sent to food bank in the status field, then that means there's a problem on the website and that order never left. And that would be something that they would probably contact you guys about, and then you would have to contact a matrix to find out why the order is still in sent to food bank mode. Or I'm sorry, still in new order mode. Once the order has been sent to the food bank, meaning it's left the folder structure on Agency Express, then it goes into the status of sent to food bank. And at that point, it's now waiting for the response from Ceres to say that the order's been received. So if the agency sees that their order is in sent to food bank status, and it's in sent to food bank status for a very long time, then they'll probably contact you and say, you know, my order still says sent to food bank. That's where you're going to want to go in and check to make sure that your FTP is processing, that it's getting those files coming from Agency Express. And if your FTP is processing, then you want to look at your NAS. Is it running? Do you have the last iteration updating when you go into the web sync? And obviously I have to hit refresh because it doesn't recognize the last time that it ran. Actually, refresh isn't going to work. I got to go in and reopen it. Sometimes refresh works, sometimes not so much. But now we can see that the last iteration is updated. However, if you checked your FTP and you saw that it was running and it had updated recently, but you still didn't have the orders in the system, then you would want to come in here and make sure that your Navision application server has updated recently, and if not, then you would want to go look at the services and find out if that is showing as started or not. So we'll go back over here, And we'll hit refresh on this screen. And because this is a sandbox, it takes a little bit longer for things to process. And of course, it still says new order. So until it says sent to food bank, there's no point in us looking for it in Ceres because it's just going to, well, not going to be there until that changes to sent to food bank. But the idea is that once the shopper has submitted it and it's in the sent to food bank mode, then once it hits Ceres, if you have it set to auto accept, as long as everything is good, then that will send an update to the web to show this order has changed from sent to food bank to acknowledged. And that happens, and again, it's kind of slow here having to wait for this to update so that it says sent to food bank. But what will happen is that order will come in to the in trans folder. So you would go to in and then trans, and you would look for a file in here that says something like PO, a number, and then information about that particular agency. So if we wanted to look at an order that's already processed, we can go to backup and go to trans. And you'll see these different prefixes here. PR means, and even though it's an agency order in Ceres, it's a purchase order on their end because they're, quote, buying from the food bank. Even though they may not have to pay for things or they may pay a reduced price, it's still a purchase order. So it comes in as a PO, purchase order. And here you'll see the food bank ID followed by the agency number, and then that's the PO number that they saw when they submitted their order. And then here's another one for a different agency and a different PO number. And then the one that says PA, that's the acknowledgement. So if an acknowledgement goes out, it's going to create a PA file. That's what sends to Agency Express to tell it that the order is now in an acknowledged status. PI means that it's been invoiced, and PR means that, I believe that means it's been shipped, but I'm not honestly sure of what the PR one is different from the PI. But these are the different files that you'll see, and if you open up one of the PO files, you can see, and you can typically on yours open that up with XML and it will look a lot prettier, but let's put this in Word Wrap here so we can see it. But it basically sends the PO number. Oh, and this is actually our order, right? Because it says please contact Pete for, and then I didn't put anything else on there. And then this was, well, you know what? It shows my created date of 6/19. I'm not sure why. Oh, because that's when the order was originally created. It wasn't submitted until today, but it was created on 6/19. But it has all the information about the order in here, and so I'm not sure if this really is my order or not. I thought it was, but it has a pickup date of 6/30, and we picked July 14th, so that's a little sketchy. I'm guessing that's a different order for that agency. So we'll go back now and look at the in-trans folder to see if by chance our order has come in. And it looks like there was a process, something happened at 3 minutes ago, so it's possible that it did already come in. And how we can confirm that is we can go look at our web processing queue. And we won't necessarily see anything in the unprocessed queue because the unprocessed queue only shows stuff that's waiting to leave Ceres and go to Agency Express. Just a second, and I will answer your question there, Dee Dee. Let me just go back and finish this here. But you will see once something's processed that came in from Agency Express, you'll see it down here in the processed entries, and the type would be order, and it would have the information such as sending an acknowledgement. And you would also see item availability updates because it has to send the new quantities that are available based on the order that just came in. Okay, so Dee Dee's question was, the issue that we're having now is that our dates are not in sync after we've synced. Some are and some aren't. When you say your dates are not in sync, are you talking about the scheduling for the agencies? the dates that they see when they're going in to look at their schedule?
Yes, like when they go in to choose their dates in there, like today we synchronized the system and the date should have been available for them to choose. It wasn't there. So my question was, will we be able to see anything during this step that you're showing us now? Will we be able to see
Yes.
anything there if it's processed in between?
Yes. So what you would look for is you would look for a type of appointment
Okay,
and perhaps schedule master, depending on what you're synchronizing. But you would look
okay,
for a type of appointment. If all of the appointments are still in the web processing queue, unprocessed entries, then it means that they haven't yet been sent to the web. If they show down
okay,
here in the processed entry screen, then what you want to do is you want to go look in this folder called out and then
okay,
sched, and you're going to look to see if there's anything in here. If there's anything in here that says ISQ as the prefix, then that means that the files, and you probably would be able to tell because the date would be today's date, then that
okay,
means the files haven't yet been picked up by the FTP and sent to the web. And it could be because they're a large file, and that's why they haven't transmitted yet. But
okay,
if this folder is empty and you go look in the backup schedule folder and you see files from today here, and you might have to switch your date modified so you can see the most recent. If you see an ISQ file with today's date and you open that
mhm,
up and it shows all the appointments that you synchronized today and the date
okay,
that it processed, so when you come down here and you look at the date processed and the time processed, and it's
uh-huh,
more than, say, 15 minutes ago, then I would contact Aid Matrix and make sure that they got that file.
okay.
Okay? And
That is exactly what I was asking. Yep,
exactly, yeah. So you
yep.
definitely want to look in here. This will help you troubleshoot that for sure.
Right, that's why I was trying to see if it'll help us troubleshoot in what location is this processing in. Okay,
Yep. Yeah, so a couple different places. You want to check the web sync, and then if you see that the files did actually process, they're down here in the web processed entries queue, then you would go look and make sure that they're not in the out folder for the sync. And then, oops, I lost my connection there to the sync. Let's go back in. So you would go make sure that there's nothing in your out, and if this, in this case, would be schedule folder. And if there's nothing there, then you want to make sure that it's in your backup schedule folder. And if it is, then you know to contact Agency Express. If
okay,
it's not left the out folder, so it's here in the out schedule folder, then that's when you want to check to make sure that your FTP is running.
okay.
And that's a scheduled task. So that's kind of why I went over those different things that can be the places where it trips up and it doesn't get updated on the web. So those are kind of places that you would want to troubleshoot from.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep. Thank
All
you.
right. Well, I think I've pretty much covered everything that I wanted to cover. Were there any other questions that you guys had right now?
No, I'm great.
Okay, good. Megan, Tommy, how about you? I'll unmute you so you have a chance to speak. Oh, a question about the shadow shopper? Sure. I unmuted you so you can talk. It's okay.
Oh, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I forget about that sometimes. So you were talking about can we only log in as a shadow shopper on the sandbox, or we can do
Nope.
that in live?
You could do that in live as well. So Shadow Shopper works whether you're logging into live, and I'm going to log into an actual site. In fact, if I can get that to come down here.
And you said it was the account, their account number, the change 1-2, and then what was the program code for that?
Right. So your food bank ID is what?
0076.
So you would put in 0076P and then an agency number. So what's one of your agency numbers that shops online?
BX0085.
Uh,
B as in boy, X0085.
85. Okay. So you would put in the username of admin and the password of change12, and then their information for logging in, just like they would other than they would put in their shopper name.
Yeah.
And, well, sure, maybe your password is not change12 for your admin.
Okay, so
this
but we would
only
use the
works.
password for our admin. I guess that was my question because I had tried it and I couldn't get in.
And you couldn't get in, yeah. So it could be that the person who set up the password for the admin, so you should have a agency called admin in your database, and whatever password they use to log in as that is the password that you have to have here to be a shadow shopper.
Yeah, because I just changed one too as well.
Okay, yeah, so some people change it, some people don't, so it just depends, you know, what password you use there. But if you know that password, then you should be able to log in as a shadow shopper.
Okay, and it's just, that I think I've done that by accident, maybe, but didn't realize what I was doing. But that's interesting because we have a lot of agencies, you may have mentioned this when I missed it, but the pending, they don't submit the cart, and so when we call, being able to see their accounts without having their password is kind of really important.
Exactly, yes. That way you can log in and see that they never submitted their cart. Right.
The shadow shopper, though, you can't go in and tweak that, though, right? Because you normally have to log in with all of the information to go in and submit their cart for them.
The reason why I don't recommend submitting the cart for them is that the shadow shopper doesn't have a actual email, an actual shopper card in the system. Now, you could go onto all of your agencies and create a fake shopper for every single of your agencies and use that shopper to log in versus the shadow shopper, and then you can submit the cart under that fake shopper. As long as it's got a valid email attached to it, that would work. But otherwise, you use the shadow shopper to log in and, like Megan said, look to see if they really submitted their cart or if it was still sitting there unsubmitted. You know, other stuff that they have issues with. But it just means that you have to know what password you're using for the admin login, and that will work.
Okay. That's awesome. Thank you.
All right, you bet. All right, well, if you have any other questions, you can always let me know later. I'll send out some documentation. There's documentation on HungerNet as well, and then I'll send out some of the documentation that we have, and that's about Agency Express that you may have seen before, or may have, or may not have. So hopefully that will give you some additional information as well.
Okay, you can send it to Ashley and Ashley will forward it to me.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, thank you all for attending. I really appreciate it.
This is very informative. I really appreciate it.
You bet. You bet. Have a great rest of the day and enjoy your 4th.
You too.
Bye-bye.